everybody in the room groaned, not because they said that's terrible for Biden, but because they knew what he was suffering through at the
Mm,
time. There was real ageism and real handicapped discrimination going on
yeah.
there, which should not have happened.
I wonder what Robert Weiner thinks. He's a former White House Director of Public Affairs and a close friend of Joe Biden. Robert, welcome to you.
John, thank you for having me, and your producers are fantastic. So thanks to them also. I love being on Times Radio. What you guys have done to build a masterful world powerhouse out of the London Times doing radio and by way of internet TV is magnificent. And thank you for having me on.
Robert, it's great to have you here, and for that endorsement, 1,000 thanks. I'm now just going to ask you one question: Is how wonderful is it to have your depth of wisdom? Now, I better add another one to that. As a friend of Joe Biden, were you surprised to go back to the weekend? Were you surprised when Joe Biden stood aside, and are you relieved now that he did?
Well, not once Jill and the family were talking. That was code for we're going to be doing this. And everybody saw the handwriting on the wall. So I went in and I looked at the polling and the 536s and the polling averages. They all really were dismal in terms of the popularity of Biden as a candidate. And you know that Harris is now at 94% among Democrats? She has locked it in. So he knew exactly what he was doing. He did a
Hmm.
patriotic thing for the country. Now, that really didn't mean anything because there was movement. He was coming back from that debate, and every appearance since then was acceptable enough. And you know that Dukakis was 17 up at his convention 2 months from now equivalent, and then lost to Bush.
Yes.
So you know the polling is irrelevant. It's the trending and the movement that occurs. The trending and the movement toward Harris has been remarkable. All of the funding, the $180 million that she's raised since the announcement and all of that, it's just stopped the bleeding among the Democrats and given them enthusiasm. But I think James Carville, the great warrior, is right. He said you can't prematurely celebrate because this is going to be tight. It's going to be close. And on that score, I agree with the person you just had on before.
Yeah.
But he's not right about all the polls, by the way. Harris is climbing, and people are excited. And there's a reason, and people see the way that she's prosecuting the case.
Yeah, I mean, James Carville, who famously said when it came to what matters in an election, he said it's the economy, stupid. He's one of the most quoted strategists in existence, possibly in history. Now, later on, when we do hear from your friend Joe Biden, what do you expect him to say about his decision to stand aside?
He is proud of his legacy, and he should be. And by the way, it's the Biden-Harris legacy, stopping the recession that nobody says this. I don't know why. Every economist said we were going to have a recession, and instead, by Biden and Harris jacking the economy up with programs and support, it stopped a recession. And now the World Bank says the United States is powering the world with its economy.
Yeah.
So that and NATO and bringing the coalition together and expanding NATO by two countries, which has scared Putin ruthlessly,
Right.
right? So all of that. So he has done a magnificent job in terms of, and the infrastructure bill that he did, and the health, and the $35 cap on insulin, and the
Yeah.
fact that a number of other drugs are going to be in the same bucket. So he's done a phenomenal job with coalitions and bipartisan. He had Mitch McConnell standing with him at the bridge in Kentucky for an infrastructure project. The two of them bipartisan, and then the bill passed. So what he has done has been just amazing. And it must continue and not be in the hands of, give me $1 billion, oil companies, and I'll give you everything you want.
Right.
It must not be, keep me out of jail. I can get out of all of these investigations because I have friends on the Supreme Court who gave me immunity. It can't be that. And what Kamala Harris has done in laying out the case for and against and the future, people are genuinely excited. But
Right.
again, there can be no premature celebration.
Right. Now, that's a very positive take on Joe Biden's legacy, and we may well be getting a good slug of that when the president speaks later on today. But I just wonder, on the very sensitive and much more personally difficult matter of his decision, very reluctant, it seemed to everyone else, very reluctant decision to stand aside for Kamala Harris, I just wonder what he's going to say about that. What do you think?
Well, I can picture him. You know, I was at his house when he first announced for Senate. We've been friends forever. But I can picture him when the Jeffries and Schumer endorsement came out for Harris. And I mean, of course he regrets the fact that he didn't get a chance That 20 seconds, and he knows it, that he did in the debate when he went, and he did it for 20
Mm,
seconds. I was at the National Press Club with the 200 media there watching, and everybody in the room groaned, not because they said that's terrible for Biden, but because they knew what he was suffering through at the
mm,
time. There was real ageism and real handicapped discrimination going on
mm.
there, which should not have happened. And that's going to be an op-ed that we do. I run the
Okay.
op-ed writing group at the, of young
Right.
writers out of the National Press Club. But so there's real regret about what he did. He knew he had a horrible debate. If I were him, I would have asked for a 2-day delay with the sore throat and the way that he felt down
Right.
for
So,
that.
so you believe, do you, Robert, that Joe Biden bouts a wholly unjustified age discrimination, that he was, in fact, perfectly fit to fight on, that he could have beaten Donald Trump in the election race, despite every opinion to the contrary, and he's simply given way through weight of opposition? Is that your view?
Not quite. I do know that the Democrats have overpolled every single election 1917, 18, since 16, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, overpolled by some 10 points because of the not Trump and all the things that he is, which is allied to Russia and narcissistic and corrupt and convicted and all of that, and sex abuser, all of that, all those reasons the Democrats do well. And I think that this might have been, I'm not going to say would have been, the same situation.
Right.
So it might have been, but he saw the polling too. He saw all the polling, and there has been a bump up for Harris. The negatives aren't there, certainly the age,
Yes.
and the kids are excited and so forth
Yeah.
now. So the women are excited. They were before too because of what Trump did on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But I think Harris now is being and Biden is the gracious supporter and is going to be the person that brings the Democrats forward. But it's going to be a tough haul.
Yes.
I see this realistically, as Carville did, that it's the polling shows it's close. But I think the more that Harris, who's a spectacular debater, brings all these issues out, the more that there will be support for her. And what Clyburn said is, true for Biden. I think it could be true for Harris. That 8 million margin that Biden had could turn into a 15 million if all the negatives of Trump and Harris is as effective as she appears now become the reality.
Well, we'll never know, obviously, whether the polls underrated Joe Biden because he has now gone. How do you explain? Tell me how you explain Kamala Harris's really rather unimpressive poll ratings up to this point.
Well, I hate to bring this up, but Biden lost. He never did anything until he did. So there were several efforts that he did. I remember when he dropped out the first time for president. So you have to get to know Joe, and Kamala's done a crash course like I've never seen. I've never seen how all the state Democratic governors, all the chairs, the states are coming in. New York just came in. I mean, she's already locked in. The consensus has been a groundswell. And I think people just don't want to see chaos like the Republicans had in 15 votes for the Speaker of the House. The Democrats aren't going to be like that.
Sure, but she
The way
hasn't impressed.
Pelosi ran,
Robert, she hasn't impressed so far. Why not?
she has what?
She hasn't impressed until this point. Why
Until
not?
now.
Yeah.
Because she's grown into the position. And by the way, people say she hasn't. She's done a magnificent job on choice and women's power and abortion and as speaking. But it's really more the last 2 months that she's really come into her own, and now she's really come into her own.
Okay.
As the top of the ticket. And if you watch Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and everywhere she's been going, the cheers are enormous. So she's doing a spectacular job of bringing all the constituents together. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a vote by acclamation from the convention floor, but we're going to find out within the next few days because I think it's August 4th or something like that, they will have all of the votes locked down for the convention.
Okay. All right. Good to talk to you, Robert. Thank you. And not just because of your kind words about Times Radio. That's Robert Weiner, a close friend of Joe Biden.